Andy, it's the Friday before Memorial Day. This is good. This is great. It's a 3-day weekend. We get to celebrate and remember those who served. Well, not served, but those who sacrificed for this country. They served, of course, but they sacrificed for this country. Remember those. It's a solemn day, of course. It was also filled with a lot of great activities and remembrances around the country. You and I will be doing something fun. We'll talk about that, I think, on Monday then too. But Andy, another tried and true part of the season is when former political rivals bend the knee to the nominee of their party and give their votes. We saw this all through the first part of the election season. One person who had resisted to this point was Nikki Haley, who stood the longest against Trump, who can you really even say Trump was in the in the primary? I mean, yes, his name was on the ballot, but you would never have known it
Yeah.
because he was never at any of the debates or anything. But this week, Andy, Nikki Haley finally said she would vote for Donald Trump on election day. It's really stupid. One, what else is she supposed to do? She wants the Republican nominee next time around. So she's going to do that. And is she going to vote for a Democrat? And there's no, and is she going to say she's not going to vote? So none of those other options are good. She had no other choice here.
Yeah.
But somehow, Andy, I lost a level of respect. So I don't know. What do you think when you saw that news?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately, it's what you expect it to be. I mean, we see this happen time and again. There's brutal primaries, everybody's talking bad about the one candidate, but then they coalesce around that candidate at the end of the day. And it is hard not to because of our system of governing elections, right? I mean, if Nikki Haley repudiated Trump and would not support him, that really does make it hard for her to run, again, in the future as a Republican. And she can't run as a Democrat. And because of our electoral system today, it's hard to be that third party that we can come back to that, right? So it's not surprising. We've seen it happen. I mean, it happened to a lesser extent, to Biden last time around. There's some pretty harsh remarks thrown his way, but then things came together for him. Everybody fell in line, and now half his opponents serve in his cabinet. And I think we talked before about, the vicious rivalry between Ronald Reagan and George Bush in 1980, and then I think Reagan referred to Bush as a wimp, and it was very sort of hostile. But then when it came down to it, hey, vice president, run 8 successful years together, followed by Bush's one term in office. So we see these things, and who knows? Maybe Trump Haley isn't out of the picture. Maybe that's the campaign ticket to try and bring together the Republican Party, right? Trump needs that support. He wants those Nikki Haley voters. I don't know that having Nikki Haley on his ticket brings those that voted against him in, to be honest with you. But, I think that's a possibility, right? It's a possibility he'll want to bring somebody in as his vice president that's not completely insane. And so, not surprising, still disappointing, but it is what it is. That's, I think, that's where we are.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. I think you summed it up really well, and I don't think we need to talk more about this. I think Biden's not concerned, of course, because he's come out and said, "Well, who else are those other people gonna like?" We think we can court the Nikki Haley voters anyways because they didn't want Trump. Just
Yeah.
because she's going there doesn't mean they're out of play. I mean, they're not going to follow her. They were just the hardcore Republicans were going to go hardcore Republicans. We still have an option to get these Nikki Haley voters. I don't think they're necessarily wrong. I just continue to see Biden struggle, and I think that's part of the problem. Is and it's I fear it's going to show on the debate stage too. I think no matter how much you prepare for it, and no matter how much the conditions are set in his favor, look, I just don't think he's strong enough on these public forums to do that. So and you're going to be there for what, an hour, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
There's going to be a flub and people are going to capitalize on it. So
Yeah, and that could go both ways, to be honest. I mean, I could either one of those two guys, but I think you're right. I don't think Nikki Haley primary voters are Nikki Haley loyalists for the most part. I think there were protest votes to not vote for Donald Trump. Some of them will probably shrug their shoulders and say, hey, if it's Trump or Biden, I'm going to vote for Trump. But I think a lot are going to say, I can't do it, and I need to vote otherwise. And it might be for uh, Biden. And again, some of those voters in open primary states could have been Democrats to start with, so some of them could be already really Biden voters. And again, Dave, this weekend, we've got the Libertarian Party convention on Memorial Day weekend. There's going to be somebody
Yep.
nominated, and so there's going to be another option whether people want to vote for that person or not. It looks like it's going to be a him, so if people want to vote for him or not, we'll see. But there will be at least if somebody really wants a protest vote, they can vote for a Libertarian candidate if they choose to do that. So I don't know that Nikki Haley's bringing her voters with her.
Yeah, the Libertarians, unlike RFK, yeah, they're on all 50 states. I mean,
Yeah.
and so I mean, there will be votes that will be gained there. Trump is speaking there too, I think, this weekend. So, or these next couple of days. So,
Yeah.
all right, Andy, let's put that one away. Enough about that. We'll see how things progress through the summer. Contested convention, hashtag convention, contested convention. Okay, Andy, let's talk about, you know, I had some rants over the fall about the NIL, the name,
Yeah.
image, and likeness part of the NCAA. Well, Andy, this continued in a lot of ways. While a lot of people were making a lot of money and doing quite well off the NIL, it's the Wild West out there. But the NCAA was also faced with another lawsuit, basically uh, against that the fact that they were not allowing student athletes to get employment in other positions, or they were evaluating their ability to get employment, like a summer job, for example, or something else. Why? Because it could be given to them because they're a star football player or a star basketball, softball player, their status as a student athlete. So the NCAA put a lot of rules around this. Well, they got sued again, and it was not going to work out in their favor. But ultimately, what it wound up being is that the NCAA settled. It was over $2 billion that'll have to be paid out to athletes, student athletes, over I think an 8-year period since 2016 or something to that effect. But more importantly, it sets the stage now for paying your student athletes, giving them some sort of compensation above and beyond just getting a scholarship or any of those other tuition assistant programs, above and beyond the NIL money that is still be out there. They'll be getting paid now, and it'll start. It looks like in 2025, so not this coming year, but the Big Five power conferences are behind it. The NCAA is behind it. It may be a little bit different beyond those Power Five conferences, but we're now in a new world where the amateurism is kind of off the hook, and it's ironic, though, in the case against the NCAA, they use the NCAA's own words against them. The NCAA has a lot of promotions about student athletes. Most of them don't go on to be professional athletes. And yet, and that was exactly what was used, that these, restrictions by the NCAA limited these athletes, these student athletes, from making money outside of playing a sport, which they'll never play professionally.
Yeah.
And so, what'd you see? What'd you think when you saw this, Andy?
Yeah, I'm mixed on it. I mean, there's a part of me that is really glad that the students can be rewarded for their hard work, right? And I mean, for a lot of college athletes, I would guess to say the majority of college athletes, being on a college team it's a big commitment of time, and so it is really hard to have a job on the side and play on your college team, even down to lower levels of college sports, right? It's still a big time demand. And so part of me is very grateful that these kids can be compensated for that because some of them need it. Some of them need that. And they're earning a lot of money for the universities. And so, like they should be paid. So in that sense, I'm very happy about it. I think it's probably the right thing, a good thing. I don't know how it breaks down, right? So how are the schools going to pay the students? Is there going to be, flat amounts? Is it going to be, are you paying star athletes more? And so not having done the math yet on how it's going to translate starting in 2025, my concern is, the pressure now is going to be put on some of these young athletes in middle school and high school to get to play in college. You already have a lot of parents really pushing their kids aggressively to to get to that level, right? They're really pushing their kids to play in college with a chance of going pro. Now with money incentivizing things, I worry that could be even more pressure for young athletes. I don't know if that's a good thing. It's very difficult already. There's a lot of pressure in youth sports already. This has me a little concerned. Not to object to it. It's just a worry. Like could this be even more pressure for our young athletes? That I'd hate to see. I think that's probably going to happen to some extent. So again, I haven't seen the numbers on how this will translate to paying the athletes directly, but that's a concern. But overall, I mean, look, schools are killing it on college sports. Students deserve to be compensated for part of that, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree they deserve to be compensated. There's a lot of money out there, Andy, with all these rights and stuff, and it goes to the schools and then what do? They have buyout after buyout of coaches. They have all this other stuff, but yet the athletes are the ones they may not be able to transfer. They may be restricted from doing all these things. You have these stupid rules where a coach buys somebody a slice of pizza and they're now suspended or something. It's just really ridiculous. And this is one I think is it was right. I mean, you should be paying the athletes to some degree. Now, there's always going to be that argument. Well, they get to go to school free. Yeah, but yeah, a lot of people can get scholarships and go to school for free as well. But are they bringing in billions of dollars or several millions of dollars to that organization? The answer is frankly no. And let's just not hide that fact. What I will be interested to see is there a scale? Is there like freshmen get
Right?
this amount, sophomores? Do quarterbacks get more than linemen? I mean, obviously, in the NFL, we know that's to be true.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks make the most. So is that going to happen here? What happens with the NIL then? Are there still going to be the sponsorship type of things if the athlete is being paid? I can't even put a number on what would you fairly compensate some of these players for. So this is going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
But I do feel like this is going to be further distinguish the Power Five, especially in football and basketball, the big sports, from the rest of the that second tier. Not to say that those second tier schools are any less good and they develop any less quality players. But the bottom line is the Power Five gets the big deals, they get the big rights, they get the big attention. They sell out $100,000, 100,000 seat stadiums. So I think it's going to be quite fascinating to see how that plays out.
Yeah.
It just makes this sports landscape even more. I mean, do we even get to the point where we should say, college sports should be separate from the college? Should it be managed separately under this different thing? So I'll be interested to see how it plays out, Andy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't know if they know the answers to a lot of those questions yet, so I think they're going
Yeah.
to try to, and that might be why it's not starting until 2025, so they can sort through it. But I think most people would probably agree that generally it's a good thing in concept and principle, but there are a lot of really important decisions to make and see how it affects the schools, the athletes, the programs, like I said, and the families. There's a lot to think about there. So hopefully it goes the right way. Hopefully it goes out the right way.
Yeah, we'll definitely see how it plays out. So, all right, Andy, one other, as we go into Memorial Day, obviously it's a big holiday or big time for the country. As we mentioned earlier, it's a time to recognize those who gave the sacrifice for this country and all the freedoms and liberties that we have. And so with that, there's also a lot of over the weekend, there'll be a lot of movies and shows on reflecting on veterans, reflecting on experiences, reflecting on conflicts, because that's where ultimately these individuals have given their lives for. And it kind of brings me back because like growing up, my dad, I grew up in my dad watched a lot of these movies, the World War II movies, Battle of the Bulge, a lot of these great movies that are coming up. So I got exposed to a lot of that, and I have a lot of these favorites growing up, and over the years I continue to watch them again with my military service and your service as well, and we both served in conflict. I don't know. I have a couple ones that I really enjoy watching. There's a lot of movies out there. There's a lot of shows out there. I thought it'd be fun to kind of just go through a couple of our ones that we kind of like. What do you think about that, Andy?
Yeah, let's do. I don't. I didn't watch a whole lot of war movies. I did grow up reading a lot of war books. I think that's part of what motivated me towards going into the army. I read a lot of Korea and Vietnam books and special forces books, and it got me eager to serve in a lot of different ways. I didn't watch a ton of movies, but there were a few that I really remember standing out. Some historical, some otherwise. So yeah, let's talk, Dave. Let's talk.
Yeah, let's. Interesting you bring up more about reading the books. I did too. I enjoyed reading a lot. I remember at George Mason taking a Vietnam War history class. One because I wanted to understand it a lot better. And one of the books we read was "We Were Soldiers Once and Young." In the great book. I thought it sucked as a movie. I really did not enjoy it as a movie. But I love the book and had a lot of great opportunities to go there. And in fact, I think Andy, the former Fort Benning, is named now Fort General and Mrs. Hal Moore, I think is what the new Fort Benning is. So I thought that was very appropriate because again, he ushered in that time of maneuver, air mobility into in Vietnam, and then it carried through for a lot of different ways. So, okay, Andy, you want to go first? Or you want me to go? Well, let's just pick three, and then we'll maybe if we have some odds and ends that we want to add in there, we can do that. What do you think about that?
That works for me. It works for me. And just well, I'll hold that. So yeah, good for the
Okay.
three. Good for the three.
All right, so I'll start, and these are in no order of precedence. These are just order of ones that we can enjoy and sit down and watch. Andy, one I love more. I mentioned it earlier. Battle of the Bulge. This is a classic movie, World War II movie about a very important part of history. Had so many great characters in it, whether it was be Telly Savalas, and Telly Savalas was in so many great World War II movies. You had a ton of great actors all throughout this movie, and so that's one of my favorites. I remember distinctly. I mean, my dad would watch this religiously every time it would come, and it's not a short movie. It's quite a long movie because the Battle of the Bulge went for quite some time. But you had so many great areas there to talk through. A lot of great historical moments as we went through on that, and I just really enjoyed watching that movie. So I'm going to start with Battle of the Bulge, Andy. That's where I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, look, Dave, you've teased me in the past about copying the Telly Savalas look. I think he was just a great actor for his, for his time. I think he played a lot of, really big characters, both on the big screen and on the small screen, and it's a big movie. I mean, it's a big part of our history. So I think it's a great pick. It's a great pick.
All right, where are you going to pick for your first one?
So I'm gonna go to a different war, Dave. I'm gonna go with Full Metal Jacket,
Oh yeah.
the famous Vietnam movie. I think it had a combination of very serious painful moments and also some pretty entertaining comedic moments mixed in. It's a powerful movie. I think it came out, if I recall, like mid '80s, I think. And I wasn't old enough, I don't think, to watch it when it first came out. I think I watched that on tape a few years later. And it's just a powerful movie. I remember it, to telling that Vietnam story, following some young Marines, and it was a big one.
Yeah, Full Metal Jacket was great. I mean, it showed a little just a rawness of a lot of things. I think again the drill sergeant scenes
Yeah,
were like a lot of the lasting memories in that movie that I particularly enjoyed as well. I didn't like it at first when I first saw it, but then over the years, the more I watched it, the more I enjoyed it. Private Joker and all those other fun characters. Okay, Andy, I'm gonna go with number two here. I'm gonna pick Kelly's Heroes. This is a again talking about cast of characters in this movie. You'll see everything from Clint Eastwood, Donald Sutherland, Telly Savalas, down all the way to Uncle Leo from Seinfeld fame. Andy,
that's
he's the engineering commander who helps them establish a makeshift bridge and guarantees them to get the money. This is Andy. You remember the movie Three Kings with Ice Cube and George Clooney, in which they try to during the Gulf War they tried to go get the gold and all that stuff.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yeah, yeah,
very similar type of thing here. Clint Eastwood hears about a bank behind German lines that has, $16 million worth of gold, and he needs to get somebody there to rob the bank. And so, yes, it's a kind of a theft movie in some respects, but it talks about all the horrors of war, talks about shows a lot of great things. Telly Savalas is great in this movie. Donald Sutherland's great in this movie. No negative waves, Moriarty. No negative waves. And so there's a lot of good stuff there. It's fun. It was made in the 60s, fun movie. I always enjoy it when it comes on TV. So that's my second one, Kelly's Heroes, Andy.
I like you going with some of these older ones, Dave. Classic actors, classic movies. A lot of big names. You forget how many of these actors. I feel like war movies, historical war movies, were bigger when we were
Mhm.
younger.
Yeah.
They rally a little bit more sentiment, I think, a little bit more patriotism, a little bit also a little bit of sort of frustration with the military that was still present as we were growing up. We weren't that far removed from Vietnam. There's a lot of different things happening at once, and I feel like some of these movies were really powerful in their time. But I'm going to go back a few years later, still a movie that came out just as you and I were entering active duty. That to me is probably like in a historical sense the most significant war movie that I've seen, um, and really made a major change in this actor's career trajectory, which is Tom Hanks in Saving Private Ryan, which came out in 1998. Just such a it was a huge movie when it came out. Tells a pretty incredible story of young Private Ryan, who's sort of the to me, the sort of the amid the darkness of war and conflict and death and carnage and frustration, and never really being able to understand what the hell you're doing or why you're doing it at times, during combat. And then they find this glimmer of hope to save this kid. Like, hey, we've got to do this. And they go on to try and save young Tom Hanks. And again, change Tom Hanks' career. To that point, I believe he'd pretty much been just doing his comedies and, was a comedic actor, a young actor, a fun, lovable guy, and now he was becoming this very serious dramatic actor. And he totally changed his career, and he went on to do some other really significant movies after that, of course. But a really powerful movie, and I think it really defined sort of military movies for that time. In the '90s, in the early noughts, and I thought it was great. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I think what brought in more than anything else was that moment of realism, the way it was shot, the way it was done. Kudos to Steven Spielberg on a lot of that front. It's hard to believe that movie didn't win Best Movie of the Year that year. That was Shakespeare in Love. I know that because I love Shakespeare in Love. I thought that was a great movie. But Saving Private Ryan was excellent. The first 30, 45 minutes are as intense as anything else out there. And the last 45 minutes of that movie are also really intense. And then that issue ushered in also the like the Band of Brothers type of show. And that did not make my list, but that's just because it stands separate from everything else. I think that series itself for me was more than anything else. But I love Saving Private Ryan. I can watch that all day long. And I think again, talking about a great cast, Matt Damon, Tom Hanks, you had Vin Diesel
Vin
playing us.
Diesel, yeah, that's
He
right.
was in there, early Vin Diesel. Um,
Ruth.
yeah, a lot of great stuff in there. So, great pick, Andy, for sure. Great pick. I had that one I was thinking about, but again, I think it just was so. I don't know. It just distinguished itself from separately. So I like that pick too. Andy, the other one I will go with more of a recent one here. It's American Sniper.
Mhm.
And this is a Clint Eastwood movie in which he directed it, but again, telling the story of one of the greatest snipers in American military history. And then his unfortunate death at the end, not in war, but elsewhere. If you haven't seen that story, you should look it up because it's a fascinating story. But I think it really captured like what a soldier's commitment, right? A soldier's obligation to his men, to his mission while he's in the zone. But it also shows like the tax it takes on those soldiers, like the impact it will have on them. For as great as he was, what he was doing is like it's tough. And they were in Fallujah during a really terrible part of the Iraq War, and that just it kills you. And so it was just a shithole of an area, and I think they captured it really well, and it captured like the I thought the home front, which was just as good. You know, the interaction between him and his wife and what she was going through as well. So I really enjoy that movie. When it comes on, I definitely make sure I sit down and watch for a bit of that movie. But I really wanted to call out that one more recent one. So that was my first one there, Andy. Where would you wrap up your list with?
I like that. I didn't actually watch that movie. I probably should, but I went through a phase where after my last deployment, I didn't want to watch any military movies. Like it was hard for me to watch any military movies, and I think I still struggle with watching things relating to Iraq even more than Afghanistan. So I probably should check that one out. And I think something the movies have done I think pretty well in more modern times is showing those additional stories, right? Not just the rah 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 parts. A lot of what we grew up with, I think,
Yeah.
it was just celebrating sort of the patriotism part of things. But I think from telling bad guy backstories to telling the painful realities of how wars impact our loved ones, our families, the mentality. Being a sniper, like you said, is like that's a very intense and demanding thing. And it takes a lot of mental gymnastics to be able to sit there and just take people out that way. So I haven't seen that one, and there's a lot that I haven't seen that I probably should, but maybe still not ready for. But for my last one, I'm going to go in a very different direction. Not a historical war movie, just maybe a really fun war movie that as a kid growing up, I probably watched and burned through, three different VHS tapes watching it so many times, which is Red Dawn, the original Dave,
Yeah.
1984 Red Dawn, right? So a very different movie, fictitious, of course, the what could be if the Russian invasion had occurred, just that incredible cast of young actors, led by Patrick Swayze. Get up there and piss in the generator. Like that was just like I loved that movie. I know today and people look on it with different eyes, sort of like, what is this right wing propaganda? Like it was a great movie of our greatest rival at that time, Russia invading the United States. And there's a lot to take out of it, right? I mean, the fact you had a armed society, of folks that could go out there and conduct guerrilla warfare against the Russian horde. Like there's a lot to sort of dissect in that, I think. But just from is this an enjoyable movie? Like it's a really enjoyable movie. The
Yeah.
actors were great. Emilio Estevez, Jennifer Grey, so many actors in that movie, and it was fun to watch. And because it wasn't real, you didn't have some of those sort of historical heartstrings being pulled. You just enjoy a fun, silly movie, I thought it was great. The remake, not so much, but man, the 1984 classic, loved it, Dave.
Yeah, let's not even talk about the remake. Anytime where you have Josh Peck or Beck or whatever his name is being one of the leads there, you just go away, please. Yeah, 1980, I remember watching Red Dawn countless times as well. And again, that was a 1984, right? 1984, 86 time frame where you're really trying to rally that patriotism, still coming out of the fog of Vietnam, still Russia is the big evil empire, and it hit on so many different levels. And I definitely agree, Andy. I think that was a classic. All right, Andy, a couple other ones I did not get to. There's so many movies that I grew up watching through the years, but like there's the Navy ones like Midway or something like that. U-571. I love that movie. Matthew McConaughey, even John Bon Jovi's in that
Yeah.
movie.
Hey,
That
who doesn't love Matthew McConaughey and John
I
Bon
mean,
Jovi? I mean, the
I mean,
dream.
come on, come on. So like U-571, I really enjoyed that movie. Again, Band of Brothers goes without question. That series stands on its own. Instead, it's set apart from so many other things. I also like the Pacific, Andy, which was the one about the Pacific. My great uncle served in Guadalcanal, and you always heard about the horrors of fighting the Pacific and how it was different than the European theater, and I thought they captured it great. I mean, that the fighting there was so different, that it really did require a whole lot of extra. It was just so it was. I think they captured it great. So those are some of the things I had. I mean, obviously you can go on the River Kwai, you can go on Green Berets, you can go on a lot. There's a lot, God, what was that Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch movie, Soul Survivor, or
Yeah.
that was a I thought that was a good one about Afghanistan. There's also a great documentary, Restrepo, which I thought was really good as well. So those are some of the other ones I had. I was thinking through, Andy, but did you have any other ones that you were considering or thought about?
No, I'll leave it there, Dave. I think you covered some classic ones there. I think you got a greater appreciation of some of our movie history than I do, and I think you touched some really good ones there. So I'll leave mine alone.
What you said was that I was a loser nerd who just watched TV growing up and, and doing all that stuff. So,
I did not say that.
all right, Andy, I think it's a good way to wrap up the Friday before Memorial Day. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to our work on Monday. It'll be
Yeah.
fun. And looking forward to connecting, but also remembering those who gave that ultimate sacrifice. So, with that, Andy, good topics today. Hope you have a great weekend. I'll catch up with you next time.